This is a miter station build. I'm going to have a second video showing what I do with the cut top and what saw I put there. This is simply the base foundation that I make level. I wanted to start with a level foundation and build flat from there rather than have to build each cabinet bay to the slope of the floor. This is pretty simple. There's two long sections and there's going to be a gap between the center cabinet of the 7 bays. So one wall of the center cabinet will be on one base and the other side of the cabinet will be on the other base. The depth of this is the toe kick. I have a laser line on the wall. Here you can see I am setting my own feet at the point the foundation is level. First I shimmed the back 2 corners and then I shimmed the front, made a slight tripod, and then at the level position I'm placing these plywood scraps to replace the temporary shims to act as a permanent height fixture. Under the carpet. I put these feet at the end here to account for twist of the long 2x4, so if they twist any more, there is resistance in the perpendicular plane. Zip these in, zip, zip, zip. This is all scrap plywood. Perfect job for it. And I just trim off the top. So, this is the first project I've broken down plywood entirely on the table saw. The shop is big enough that I can rip 8 feet in one direction and 4 feet in the other direction. So long as I'm orienting the 4x8 piece of plywood in the direction of the shop and rotate the table saw to the sheet, I'm able to break down an entire sheet. I started out with taking 2 hours with a circular saw to break down an entire sheet of plywood to 20 minutes. It's just a matter of moving the table saw to the wood versus the wood to the table saw. Usually, in almost all cases, table saws are stationary and the wood is brought to the table saw, but in my case now, I'm able to bring the table saw to the wood by means of rotating it for sheet orientation. So the cut patterns I'm following were calculated by OptiCutter. It's a website that you put in the dimensions of all the pieces you need, and it spits out exactly how many sheets you need with maximum surface area usage efficiency, because the last thing you want to do is waste plywood. But eventually, you use all the plywood, or at least you hope to. So originally my build for this miter station was roughly a standard desk height, but I decided to move it up to the height of my elbows because this is going to be a standing desk. So with that, I moved from my original 10 sheets of plywood that I bought up to 11. The original 10 sheets, I was over 90% efficient, but when I bumped it up to 11 sheets, I decreased the efficiency to about 87%. That was unfortunate, but I get to use plywood at a later date. And what's nice is the offcuts for these cut patterns are such a small amount that the waste is pretty negligible for me. Most of the inefficiency, the 13%, when I increased the amount of sheets I needed for the increase in height, just turned into a single large sheet. You can see it right at the bottom there of that first sheet. So this entire project took me about 15 hours in the shop. That does not include the time it's taken me to draw it, buy material, transport it. Labeling everything was super important. It's so exciting knowing I can break down an entire sheet of plywood on this table saw and not have to get a track saw or fumble around with a track for my circular saw. Though there are going to be instances where I need to do that with material that's a bit too big for this table saw or too clunky and unsafe for me to use the table saw. Stacking all the cuts. Now, pocket holes for the shelf for each cabinet. You'll see on another project I did, the pantry, I did the pocket holes wrong. I didn't hide them the first time, but I am this time. Five on each side. This is the base of the shell. Each shell base is the same. The two cabinets I have in the middle just have shorter walls, and each have two spans at the top. So here's how I assemble the shells. Glued and screwed. I always keep my washcloth handy, get the glue right off my fingers. So I use one square clamp just to make sure it's oriented properly for the most part. I bet I can change like 1 or 2 degrees as the glue is setting up even with the screws in place without putting too much stress on the joint. Wall number 2. Clamping those really helps pull the walls in for the screws for a nice tight fit. Wipe off the excess glue. You don't want that drying. I use a chisel. I didn't really care how good the surface looked once the glue was off. It wasn't perfect. You can see here I use the rubber wand. Oh no, I use my finger still. Finish these pocket holes up, clean it up again. Now for the drawers. There's my glue brush. Easy way to do it. Let it dry on the brush. It's easy to break off. Doesn't have to get on your hands and into a washcloth. Here I have my handy dandy car battery. I'm just putting it down as a weight to hold the surface flush with the butt of this tangent wall. So instead of doing pocket holes, I figured for the drawers I could do brads. I wasn't a fan of the method I used here. I ended up brad nailing into the face of the drawers, and the face of the drawers are where I am going to screw in the drawer faces with the handles. So all the force is put on the tension side of the glue face in these walls of the drawers. So I would have much rather had the glue in this connection between the walls and shear with the force being pulled from the handle into the glue connection. I'd rather have the glue work in shear force rather than tension force. There's more resistance with shear rather than tension on that particular joint with this particular material. Plus the nails are going sideways, and nails also work better in shear rather than how they are in now, which is just tensile. Screws work in tension, nails do not. And in this glue up with the brad nails between the walls of the drawers, they are positioned in tension, which is a bad idea. Though my concern is valid, I believe that even a fast pull with high acceleration will not produce enough force to break the tensile face of the glue into the end fibers of the wood. Clean up all the glue. The chisel works nice. I really don't care about the surface look afterwards. This is for me. It's flush enough to scrape the glue with enough precision and then get the cloth in there. Stack them up. Putting these aside. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. My handy dandy knife. These cardboard flaps were really butted up against each other, so tight that the blade was having trouble wedging between them. Now to mount the drawer slides on the insides of the shelves. I should have made a jig to equally position all of these drawer mounts, but I didn't. And I was within, I would say, a 32nd of an inch vertically on the front and back of each drawer slide. These are 1/2 inch wide drawer slides, so I had to make the shell's interior walls 1 inch wider than the drawer itself, because on each side of the drawer there is a 1/2 inch of slider. So when I screwed in these mounts, I did not over tighten them. Last thing I want is for the plywood to be stripped. These screws are really only working in a shear, and I didn't want to put too much tension on the threads to rip out the plywood, because a bigger hole would allow for more weeble wobble. These are the 1/2 inch screws coming out the, what is it, 15/32 inch walls. So I had roughly I guess it would be a 32nd inch of a screw sticking out the side I needed to file down. Here I'm pushing the two bases further apart so that the ends of the 7 cabinets have a little more base beyond the edge of them, and then I can pound the base back into a flush position with the surface of the end of the cabinet. Here I just wanted to make sure the bottom's butted up against the wall. Pilot holes here. Inset for the screw heads. Zipped all these together. The front and the back were pulled together real nice. Like I said earlier, I wanted the base a little wider than the edges of the cabinets so I can then hit the base flush with the outer sides. that part of the walls popped out the most, that was my reference point. And then down the length of the wall, I had to shim the backs out to make a perfect line. The entire front edge looking down the length of the cabinet station is in line. It's crazy how non-square a house can be. Zipping all the fronts down to the toe kick underneath. Those shims underneath were just filling in teeny tiny gaps. I really don't think I needed any of them. I think they all fell out anyways.
Alright, nice. It's installed. Installed into the wall. I'm having a ball.
Beatbox.
Alright.
Of course, I just have to get rid of the excess shims. Now, just to make sure I get the perfect flush edge, because when I put the mounts on, I don't want the piece of metal that's mounted on the door to be kicked out at the bottom. Man, had I caught that tape with this flush trim bit, that would have sucked. I know a lot of people like to put the mounts right in the center of the door. I like to put them at the bottom, and the amount that was going to overlap the bottom surface would have affected its vertical alignment or parallel alignment to the wall itself. My attempt at an action shot. Now for the big boxes. Psych! Those are all done. 7 of them. 7 bays. Ah! I cut through a brad nail. So here, I ended up wanting more space. I wanted a full foot of height for the bottom drawers, so I had to take off some of the height of an upper drawer. I had to trim, I think it was a 1/2 inch, from 7 of the upper drawers. And as a result, the door faces will be misaligned between the outer 5 and the short inner 2. But whatever. Nobody's gonna notice, they say. But I will, and it's a finishing detail I plan to have proper, but I never thought of my big glue bottles are the tallest object I want to put in these bottom drawers, and I needed a foot, and I didn't think about that until after I drew the whole thing and cut all my pieces. So there's a little jig I had for repetition to get the side mounts positioned consistently. And then I had a block of wood in the front so I can move forward as far as I could with the mount so it's flush with the front face. Same thing. Same thing with these, you don't want to over tighten them. Takes a bit of force to get them in, but once they're in, they slide out real easy. See, bam, bam, bam. I had to force it in, but now it opens perfect. And these are super shallow. Well, now see, it slides easy. Slides easy. There they go. That's it. Please stick around for part 2.